was a great performance in terms of we turned it around. Not great, sorry. It was a good performance because we got over the line. Not great because no one really shone.
Win is a win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chuck. We opened our account at AFCON. We saw the favorites, the hosts, do their thing on Sunday, and then we saw the other match, Mali and Zambia.
Yeah.
And then it was our turn before we saw Mo Salah destroy our hate watch because Zimbabwe needed to do the business for us, but we're focused on Bafana Bafana. Starting lineup to be expected, right? No one started that match that we didn't think was gonna start it. Like Mbule's been roped in to be the number 10. He was there, and Ungezana, we haven't really seen him for a little while, but we thought like when everybody is healthy, he's gonna be the starting centre back along with Boki. So, yeah. That starting lineup, no surprises. We take the lead, but Angola come back, and then Foster comes through with the winning goal. What did you make of the performance?
I liked what it looked like in the first 10, 15 minutes, and then after that, I think we lost control. By that I mean we couldn't progress between the lines. We were playing the long ball from the keeper or from the defense over the entirety of the midfield, trying to win the ball or rather play our football further upfield. And I think as a result, because I think our strength is those short passes, movement off the ball, and just actually holding or keeping the ball, rotating it until we find an opening. And so because of that, the likes of Nkota went on the ball very much. We saw what Apollos can do if he gets onto the ball, but he didn't get a lot of the ball.
Yeah.
In the first half as well, I think we allowed them to play. Like there was no pressing up until they got to our box. There wasn't. I think we lacked intensity, Jay.
Wasn't that surprising? Uguti, like two things. We weren't playing out from the back very often on our side, and when we were not pressing, which is not something we've come to be accustomed to under Hugo Bros, right? We of all, maybe you want to say that of the African nations, are one of the few ones who play what you call modern football. We play out from the back and we press high if teams are trying to play out from the back, but we didn't see much of that. That was a bit surprising, no?
I mean, yeah, it was, especially because you lamented yesterday that Angola's mid-block was a problem for us. We should have at least instilled a similar idea, have a mid-block as well, if we didn't want to throw that many bodies up front to have a high press. So we didn't press up until they got into our half, and even then, like I said, I think it lacked intensity. That's why all the crosses came in, and we were late to the party in terms of contesting for the ball, cutting crosses out, or even blocking them from actually happening in the first place. So I think it was a great performance in terms of we turned it around. Not great, sorry. It was a good performance because we got over the line. Not great because you and I were struggling to find a man of the match, and it had to be Ronald Williams because he had key saves. And outside of that, no one really shone.
Win is a win, right?
Yeah.
And to not, there's no two ways about it. The thing that we're here to do is win the tournament. And I think we shouldn't be shy about saying that. We went to the semifinals last AFCON, and it wasn't fluky. And even if you want to say that, if you look at the champions, Ivory Coast, they were out of the tournament in the group stages, and then they found themselves winning it. And these are the things that happen at AFCON, right? I mean, we've done previews for these groups, and teams like Zimbabwe are teams that we don't anticipate to get out of the group stages. But when they take the lead against Egypt, it is not, oh my goodness, this is the greatest shock in football history, because this is the nature of AFCON. And while we are here to win it, and South Africans also have an extra layer of, there's a way we want to see the game played, right? Because it's not enough that we've come from a place where like our national team has not been successful. It's like, okay, we're a good team now, right? But now that we're a good team, we want to see the style. We want to see the panache. You know, I mean, we're famous for that kind of football in our minds, at least as the fans. So we got the win.
Yeah.
Check that off. Most important. We assume that Egypt are going to be the toughest opponent in this group. So we might lose against them, we might draw, we might win, right? Again, we're one of the favorites who are up there. We shouldn't think we're going into an Egypt game and we automatically are going to lose. But if there's a chance that we lose against anybody in this group, it's Egypt. So we want to get our wins against Angola, against Zimbabwe, and then, you know, it's mano a mano against Egypt. So to get the win against Angola, most important. In terms of the performance itself, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I think any time where your goalkeeper is your man of the match, which it was for me, it was for you, that's an indicator of how the team played, right?
Yeah.
And Ronald Williams transforms when he gets to the AFCON, and he proves that he is the number one. He should be there, not only for his leadership skills, but for his goalkeeping, and keeping opposition out, which he absolutely helped us, like in the game against Angola. So he had a good game. In terms of what happened in the field of play, there's room for improvement.
Speaking about Ronald Williams, we saw him animated, shouting at his defense and the likes, right? Because I think for him, they had to switch on or at least look alive. Do you think going to the next game, because there are players who came on and actually made a difference, or at least we saw what they brought to the party, do you think Umdala sticks with the same team in terms of guys do better, because I know you can? Or do you think those subs play into his thinking in terms of what the next 11 looks like?
I think he'll consider it, Chuck. It's hard to tell, right? Because on the one hand, it is the opening game, and you are getting into the tournament. We're speaking about Bafana Bafana because we're Bafana Bafana fans, right? And like from a South African perspective, and it's very easy to look at Bafana performance, and because again we have the idea that we are there to win it, and be so much more disappointed than contextually what is happening around us. Morocco struggled.
Yeah,
they struggled to score in that game, right? It took the second half for them to actually get the goals. Same thing as in Egypt in terms of the big teams we've seen thus far.
Yeah.
Mali as well, right? Mali is a team who they were well on their way to winning the AFCON actually in 2024, and until they played Ivory Coast, and what happened there, So when you look at, okay, what's happened in the other games, have any of the other teams had a performance where they look like, man, we absolutely need to match that? They haven't,
Not quite, yeah.
So there's that aspect to consider, Chuck, that we are getting into the tournament. That was the first match, and maybe you do then want to give those players another run. That is complicated by the fact that the next match on Boxing Day is against Egypt, right? But the other side of that is where Hugh Bros is concerned, and if I go back to the previous AFCON, if I go back to the qualifiers as well, he's not been shy about making changes, right? So he'll assess the team, and he will look at who absolutely perhaps needs to be replaced in the team. I can sit here and I could say, and I said last night when we were watching the match, that I'd love to see Talent Mbata in that midfield. I felt like our midfield lacked athleticism. It lacked a little dynamism, because Ustole, he did his job in terms of he's tracking people, he's trying to win the ball, he's in duels, he's in there. But in terms of showing for the ball, in terms of his involvement in the passing game, his connection with Teboho Mokoena wasn't quite there. Teboho Mokoena as well, who I firmly believe he needs to be our best player for Bafana Bafana to win the whole thing. He again in that game looked like the Teboho Mokoena I've seen for a majority of the season for Mamelodi Sundowns, right? It's a bit lethargic. It's not him controlling the games, because very often Teboho Mokoena, and I know how much you love him, when he's on the field of play, he's the best player on the pitch, and we need that version for us, as I'm saying, to realize all of our dreams. Didn't quite see that from him. So we need a bit of more dynamism in that midfield. I'm not sure, but Sipumbule in number 10, right? Because there was a big gap. You talk about our game being those passing triangles. It was very obvious that we missed some shish in the game, or that style of play.
I was thinking about Mshishi, but I'm like, do we still mention Kabala Mshishi? The tournament has begun and we can't look back, right? We have to move forward, right? But I was thinking in the warm-up game against Ghana, I felt like he was too pushed up upfield. Too advanced. And there was a hole in terms of the connection with the forward line. And in this game, he was with the three, and there was no one connecting. But as we know, with Mshishi, he's the one who drives with the ball. He does come deep to collect the ball and then join up the attack as well. Plays those small triangle passes. And so it is post-Mshishi era. At least it looks like that, because if you go to AFCON without him, I don't think he comes back later on. But he just might for the World Cup. You never know. And it's about finding those solutions. What do we do with that particular midfield? What do we do in that 10 position? Because it seems to me that if we don't figure that out, then everyone has to perform. We can't have an off day like we did against Angola. We were good enough to win, but you'd like to think against the likes of Egypt or in the knockout phases, that kind of performance or days like that where we perform like that, we might get punished.
Yeah, the link between midfield and the forward line was what was missing, right? And that's where you want to see your 10 be more engaged in terms of those actions. And the reason we speak about Mshishi is not, Mshishi should have been at the AFCON. We're just talking about what he gives to that team. And that's what we need to find within the team, whether it is a conversation with Mbule. And there's questions in terms of, is he actually a 10 or is he an 8, you know? And I said they're watching Umdala Hugh make subs and not bring on Urele while making subs on the wings. That okay, Rele is in this team to be as a 10, seems like purely because he's not bringing him on as one of the wings. And that's the other question: does he go for Rele? Will Rele be able to give us that? Because the other option last night was, do you bring on Mahop? Because we know his abilities as a false 9 and how he's able to come to, because that was the main thing in terms of attack, right? That there was that big gaping hole in between the midfield and the offense, and no connection. In terms of the midfield itself, not very fluid, not very much in control of the game. So there are questions that need to be answered, and whether Hugo Bros is able to do that on the training pitch in terms of maybe adjusting some of his formation and his shape, or he changes personnel. That one is to be seen, but it is a big game that is coming up against Egypt. And from what we saw against Zimbabwe, we should go into that game with a mindset that we want to beat them and are able to beat them.
I think for the first time, Jay, in a long time, I'd like to think we're seeing the effects of the pressure. The previous edition, we thought we had somewhat of a chance, but after having finished in third place, you thought to yourself, Bafana Bafana is unbeaten in 25 games. They must go and trample over everyone, especially Angola. So I think maybe it's game number 1 and the pressure's turned all the way up, and I think we saw that. And so we're not judging the boys too quickly. We're just talking about what happened in that particular game. There's every chance that the guys go on again against Egypt and they play better.
Yeah, Chuck, if I go back to what you were saying about Oronza, right, that level of intensity, that said to me that the captain is in the moment, and he's trying to get the boys to lock in. Like, we are in this, we are here, and we're here to win it. There was a conversation between two of the players, Mahopa and Ustoy, like the features they do before the AFCON, and so they were interviewing each other. And so one of the questions is, who's the funniest, and they answer that, and who's the most serious, and the answer was Ronald Williams, the skipper, right? And having seen that and seeing like the way he was reacting on the field, Uguti, his mindset is we need to be right here. We can't mess around. We can't give away opportunities. And the opportunity, especially if you're judging by the opening quarter of that match, is we were head and shoulders above Angola, and then something went wrong, you know. And we need to keep the way that we started. We need to keep that over the course of the 90 minutes in the other matches that we play. But at the end of the day, Chuck, the absolute big positive is that we can sit here and say that it wasn't a perfect performance, and the improvements that can be made, but we won. Yes. If we are winning matches like that, watch out when we get it sorted in agile.
If we're here and we have 3 points and Tilby hit the post and there was a disallowed goal by Moremi as well, you look at that and you're like, it could have been better. And obviously Angola can say the same thing because there were good saves that were pulled off by Ronald Williams as well. But I think, we're here nitpicking because we have these expectations, right? But it's game number 1, as you said. No one set the tournament ablaze thus far. We've gotten our 3 points and we do believe the boys can be better. So let's see what happens on the 26th.
Let's see what happens indeed. Chuck, another matter surrounding the AFCON, but long term, right, that we've been seeing discussions around is the president of ECAF, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, announced that we are going to move to a model where we're going to have the next tournament in 2027 in Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. And then we're going to have another one in 2028. We are still awaiting the host nation for that one. And then following that, we are moving to the global model, except for South America, because the Copa happens whenever it feels like, right? But in terms of the World Cup, what we've seen from the World Cup, or we've seen from the Euros every 4 years. So after 2028, the next tournament is happening in 2032. And in between, we're going to have a European-style African Nations League. And this has been met with criticism, and others are saying that it's just moving with the times. The criticism is to say that we are acquiescing to Europe because we've seen the hoo-ha when they have to release players in the middle of the season. And the other side of that is they just need to get with the program. Like, they need to respect AFCON and African players. This is when we are playing it, and they just need to release our players. The argument on their side is, but we pay these guys, you know, and if anything happens there, we are the ones affected. Why can't it go to the model that we see with the Euros or the World Cup? End of the season, end of the European season, June, July, and we go like that, which is seemingly what has happened. In changing the format of the AFCON to every 4 years, are we just bowing to a massa, or are we moving with the times?
I think it's both, right? Because if you think about the calendar and how often we've shifted the dates of AFCON, either it's because the climate doesn't necessarily agree with us in terms of when we want to stage it. Sometimes there were like rainy. One edition there was rainy seasons, and so we had to move that particular date.
In West Africa, it's a problem.
It's a problem in West Africa. Then there was the addition of the Club World Cup, and so that was a hindrance because we can't play AFCON at the same time if we want to keep to the June-July schedule of playing in the off season as far as club football is concerned. And so things have moved on and changed while we were trying to figure out what to do with AFCON, right? Because initially, why we did have it so often, Jay, was because we weren't guaranteed spots in the World Cup to begin with, right? And so we could not get that financial remuneration that other nations were getting by competing on the global stage. And so as time did progress, we had 2 spots, then 4, and now that it's expanded, at least there's 8 nations. And so there is some money coming back into the African game. And so maybe you can move things around, but that suggests to me that the reason why we have the African Nations League is to still make sure that African football has some sort of funding or some sort of financial boost to the particular game. So I think things have changed, and so we've had to bow down to those changes. And I think also, Jay, maybe thinking about the players as well, because I don't know if Mo Salah is happy to leave mid-tournament when Liverpool are struggling or when they've been on a good run to go and play with Egypt, because he wasn't winning anything with Egypt, unfortunately, Mo Salah, right? And just thinking about that disruption in the season. Yes, it makes sense for whatever nation you support, but sometimes it's a disruption for those particular players to then switch off your Tottenham colours, put on your Mali colours, come back to Tottenham again. And so it works better if it fits into that calendar. And I was someone who was saying we need to respect African competition because this is just when it happens. That's just what happens. I mean, you can't say SA20 is happening in December. This is just when it happens, you know? So I think, Jay, my final point would maybe be that we're changing because it's just more peaceful to do it this way. And we've found ways around it, I think. I think there's enough ideas and innovations within the tournament structure itself that we understand that if we host it here, here's how much money we're going to make, and if we do the Nations League, it somewhat covers that. Remember, there was the tournament that Sundowns won, the inaugural one,
the African Super League.
That was also to get more money into funding into the for African football. But a few Club World Cup, and so that was buffeted and that was sized down to only include 8 teams or whatever it was in the end. So things have changed. Yeah, I think our hand was forced ultimately.
Yeah, you see, with the tournament that you mentioned, which we were then now discussing or debating, what is the hierarchy of power in African football? Like, is that African Football League, has it come to usurp the Champions League? Are you champions of Africa if you win that one or the other one, and it happens by invitation? What is happening? You know, and very much when you watched that tournament, like you saw Dr. Patrice, you saw Infantino, and you saw the branding as well. It screamed FIFA, and that one did leave a sour taste in the mouth, right? And the thing is, Chuck, as uncomfortable as it might be for maybe someone who more sympathizes with the Dr. Patrice Motsepe because you're South African, there's a very close friendship with Infantino there. Like you just see it on your screens that there's an understanding, there's a cooperation, there's a friendship, there's a good relationship, and there's a lot of what is happening in African football that comes from those discussions or that connection, right? And Infantino might be driving some of those things. Dr. Patrice might be driving some of the other things. They might be collaborating on those things, right? And where FIFA are concerned, and Infantino, they're not many people's favorites. They're not my favorites as well. Because again, why are you giving that peace prize to Donald Trump on a whim that you didn't even tell the organization? Whereas you're the guy who came in to clean up FIFA, you know? Yeah. So when you are then aligned to a figure like that and the organization like that, and as Africans and the history that we have with Europeans, with white nations, we can't help but think, oh, okay, you've put us in a position where, again, we are to be exploited. We are just to acquiesce to everything that the master is asking of us. We are just supposed to be yes men, right? But I don't think it's that black and white, Chuck. I think it's more gray, and I think there's something to it whereby, yes, you're trying to make peace with European nations, right? And we love it, we don't. Stanas Ngatandi, where global power where football is concerned lies with Europe. That doesn't mean that I think they should dictate everything, but when you want to take a sober look at it, football is globalized, right? the PSL in South Africa has shut down for the AFCON. Other leagues in Africa have shut down for the AFCON because we are on the continent and we are respectful of the tournament, our tournament AFCON that is happening. But you've got hordes of squads at the AFCON where 90% of the players play abroad. So you cannot consider it as just being a local tournament, local to the continent, right? And the leagues and the clubs that are on the continent providing players to go to the tournament. Our players are playing in Europe, and we actually want to see our players play in Europe for their own financial remunerations and changing their lives, for growing the African game on a global scale. And we don't even recognize what we're saying when we're saying that, because we're saying that if we ship them to Europe, that is the biggest billboard, that's the biggest advertisement, the biggest market of the game. And we love seeing our players over there, and we want to see more of that. That's just how it is, right? And as a result, Chuck, part of being a good politician is making friends with your neighbors, right? You want to have a backbone where people are not just walking all over you, but you must also recognize the dynamics that I play in the room, and you must be able to shake hands and grease hands as well in some of those relationships. So we shouldn't be in a position where we're fighting FIFA and are fighting UEFA, because how well is it going to go for everyone? How well is it going to go for our players? Because they are contracted to those clubs, right? So in a sense whereby it works for everybody, because the pushback for me is again around we're just doing what they want. And we love seeing the AFCON every 2 years. Me personally, I don't. For the reason that I think every 4 years keeps something prestigious. That's why when Wenger and them are talking about the World Cup being every 2 years, I don't want to see the World Cup every 2 years. The only thing, Chuck, I'll say that I don't like about the every 4 years, Uguti, now we're never going to catch up to Egypt. Because when they went back to back, they won 3 titles in like 4 years, right? And then now you're going to try to do that in like 8 to 12 years. It's not going to happen. And hard luck to anyone who wasn't able to capitalize while it was every 2 years. But I understand why we're moving to every 4 years, and I can get on board with it.
Tell us what you think. Do you think every 4 years makes sense, especially if looking at the fact that it's aligning more with the European calendar, or do you think we should have kept AFCON as it is, every 2 years, a biennial event happening, let me say, wherever, sometimes in December, sometimes in June and July, depending on when we find a fit for the tournament in the calendar. Let us know what you think. Also, Bafana Bafana's first game against Angola. What did you make of that particular game, and what do you think we look like going forward?
Yes, indeed. Bafana Bafana did win the opening game. There's another one coming up on Boxing Day and another one after that. On our way to winning the entire tournament. We'll see if we get there. And we will be here along for the ride, the entirety of it. So if it is your first time on our channel, please, thank you for joining us. Please do subscribe to the channel, like the content, comment in the comment section. We love hearing from you. We respond to those comments. And you can also continue the conversation across all social media platforms. It is at 2UpFrontPod. I am at J_Mzulu. Chuck is at Chuck2Up. At Chuck 2Up. He's not so much on social media, so that's why I forget sometimes. And if you're also here continuously but you haven't done so, subscribe. This is 2UpFront.